Rich millionaire cheats and pregnant wife breaks down. When she leaves, he panics too late. Picture a grand mansion on the outskirts of Los Angeles, where glinting chandeliers illuminate corridors filled with secrets. A wealthy husband, Daniel Redwood, strides through rooms decorated with every luxury money can buy, but not even his fortune can shield him from the consequences of betrayal. His wife, Layla, pregnant with their child, discovers the shocking truth of his infidelity. In one heart-wrenching moment, her world shatters. She disappears, leaving behind broken vows, a haunted nursery, and a devastating silence. Panicked and alone, Daniel realizes his grave mistake. Will he find her in time, or is it too late to salvage what remains of their life together? Daniel Redwood was born into a modest family in San Diego, but at an early age, he was determined to change his fate. Through sheer determination, a keen business sense, and more than a little bit of luck, Daniel built Redwood Enterprises, a multi-million-dollar real estate company spanning the entire West Coast. By the time he was 35, Daniel was living in a Bel Air mansion that once belonged to an aging Hollywood legend. He had everything: cars, connections, and an uncanny ability to make people trust him. Charismatic and charming, Daniel could win a crowd with a single, confident smile. Layla Morrow had been an aspiring interior designer from a humble neighborhood in Sacramento. With a unique eye for color and elegance, she caught Daniel's attention at a corporate cocktail party hosted by Redwood Enterprises. He had hired her small design firm, Morrow Interiors, to reimagine one of his downtown Los Angeles offices. When they first met, Layla wearing a simple black dress, and Daniel in a tailored suit, sparks flew. He admired her passion and artistry. She admired his ambition and generosity. Their conversations lingered far longer than business required. A month later, he asked her out for dinner. Within 6 months, they were engaged. Their wedding was a grand affair at a seaside resort in Malibu, attended by celebrities, politicians, and moguls from across the country. Layla's bridesmaids, including her closest friend, Rachel Bennett, and her cousin Morgan Smith, swooned at the sight of Daniel tearfully declaring his vows. For all his wealth, Daniel seemed genuinely in love. Layla, in her ivory gown, glowed with happiness that day. Inside the Redwood mansion, Layla began to transform the decadent but somewhat lifeless property into a cozy yet lavish home. Daniel funded every vision she had imported: drapes from Italy, custom tiles from Spain, and even a commissioned mural for the living room. In every room you could sense Layla's artistic touch. When Redwood Enterprises thrived, so did their love. There were star-studded galas, romantic vacations in the French Riviera, and nights of quiet solitude where they watched old black and white films in each other's arms. Yet as Redwood Enterprises expanded, Daniel's responsibilities grew heavier. He often stayed at the office until midnight, holding one meeting after another. His new hires included the ambitious Vanessa Clark, a young, intelligent marketing executive fresh out of Stanford. Daniel recognized her talent immediately. She was poised, articulate, and had a competitive streak that mirrored his own. Layla, meanwhile, threw herself into philanthropic work. She collaborated with the Redwood Foundation, a charitable arm set up in Daniel's name, focusing on providing scholarships for underprivileged arts students. She was thrilled to be giving back and to be using her design sensibilities for community projects. But in the midst of their busy lives, Daniel and Layla saw less and less of each other. Leisurely Saturday mornings in bed became rare. Quiet Sunday afternoons reading together on the terrace turned into frantic phone calls and half-eaten breakfasts before Daniel jetted off to meet a potential investor. Layla tried to be understanding, reminding herself this was the price of success. Still, She felt the twinges of loneliness. She decided to confide in her best friend, Rachel Bennett. Over tea at a chic cafe on Sunset Boulevard, Layla admitted she was anxious. He's so distant these days. His eyes light up when he talks about Redwood Enterprises, but with me, it's like he's always somewhere else. Rachel, who had known Daniel since he and Layla began dating, tried to reassure her. He's just busy, honey. It's not easy running a multi-million-dollar empire. Layla nodded, but remained uneasy. She hoped that once she and Daniel started a family, the warmth of their marriage would return. The news of her pregnancy came on an ordinary Wednesday morning. Layla, feeling nauseous for days, took a test at home before heading to a design consultation. The two pink lines appeared almost immediately. A heady mix of excitement and fear engulfed her. She had always wanted children, and Daniel had expressed excitement in the past about being a father, teaching his son or daughter how to navigate the world with confidence. She dreamed of a big, extended family celebrating holidays in their mansion. She immediately called Daniel's cell phone. No answer. He was in a critical meeting. Unable to contain her excitement, she left an urgent voicemail. "Daniel, please call me back as soon as you can. I have some news." He called back a few hours later, his voice breathless. "Hey, I have 5 minutes before my next meeting. Everything okay?" She hesitated, disappointed that she couldn't share this life-changing moment in person, but the words poured out anyway. "I'm pregnant, Daniel. We're going to have a baby." Silence filled the line. Then came Daniel's response. "Layla, that's amazing. This is wonderful news. I'm so happy." She could hear the genuine joy in his voice. It took her by surprise, bringing tears to her eyes. He promised they would celebrate that evening, just the two of them. That night, Daniel indeed arrived home at 7, the earliest in months, carrying a bouquet of yellow roses, Layla's favorite. They ordered takeout, but neither touched their food. They were too busy talking about the baby's future, the nursery's design, possible names, and which schools might be best. Daniel insisted on looking at prestigious private schools, while Layla teased him about getting ahead of himself. For a week or two, it felt like old times. Daniel carved out time for Layla, going with her to the first prenatal appointment. The ultrasound showed a tiny, flickering heartbeat that brought tears to both their eyes. Once again, Layla believed everything would be all right. They were finally going to experience the family life she had always envisioned. However, Daniel's workload did not magically disappear. Within weeks, Redwood Enterprises was on the brink of a major merger with a rival real estate conglomerate. Meetings became more frequent, phone calls never stopped, text messages buzzed at all hours, and it was often Vanessa Clark on the other side of the screen coordinating deals, drafting strategies, making sure Redwood Enterprises stayed competitive. Layla tried to be supportive. She would pack Daniel homemade lunches, slip handwritten notes of encouragement into his briefcase, and wait up for him late into the night, even when fatigue from her pregnancy weighed her down. Often, she fell asleep on the couch around midnight, only to wake at 2 a.m. to find Daniel had come home, rummaged through the refrigerator, and gone to bed alone. One evening, Layla decided to surprise Daniel at the office. She brought a basket of fruit and vitamins, determined to keep him healthy during his grueling schedule. Stepping off the private elevator onto the executive floor, she heard laughter echoing from behind Daniel's office door. She paused. Her heart thumped harder. Inside, she found Daniel seated behind his mahogany desk and Vanessa perched casually on its edge. They were reviewing some documents, but the mood seemed decidedly more relaxed than businesslike. Layla noticed the way Vanessa's fingertips grazed Daniel's wrist for a moment. Too long. Daniel looked up, startled to see his wife standing there. Layla forced a polite smile and handed him the fruit basket. "I thought you might need a break," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Vanessa flashed a brilliant smile at Layla and stepped aside. "You're so thoughtful, Mrs. Redwood. Daniel here is a lucky man." Her voice dripped with politeness, but Layla could sense the subtle edge. Something about the way Vanessa stood there, her posture relaxed yet proprietary, made Layla's stomach twist uncomfortably. As she left, a little voice in her mind whispered that something was off. But Layla told herself she was just being sensitive. After all, she was pregnant, her hormones were all over the place. Daniel would never betray her. Would he? Weeks passed, and Layla found herself growing more uneasy. Late-night phone calls, text messages at odd hours, and the mention of Vanessa in every conversation about Redwood Enterprises became the norm. Daniel insisted it was strictly professional. "She's brilliant," he would say. "She's the reason this merger is even possible." Layla tried to brush aside her worries. Instead, she concentrated on designing the nursery. Each day she painted, rearranged furniture, and picked out curtains. It became a sanctuary for her, a pastel wonderland, with fluffy clouds on the ceiling and twinkling fairy lights around the crib. She kept telling herself this was the future that mattered, the baby, but it wasn't enough to quell her doubts. She started noticing small changes in Daniel's behavior. He'd return home with the scent of perfume lingering on his suit jacket, definitely not her perfume. He'd occasionally lock his phone the moment she entered a room. He became short-tempered, snapping at her for minor things, like misplacing his favorite pen or forgetting to pick up his dry cleaning. Layla felt she was losing him. In a desperate attempt to bridge the gap, she suggested they take a weekend trip, just a short getaway to Santa Barbara, to spend time together before the baby arrived. Daniel resisted at first, citing too much going on at work, but ultimately conceded. Layla was overjoyed. She organized the entire trip, envisioning sunsets on the beach, romantic dinners, and baby talk without interruptions. When the weekend arrived, however, Daniel spent most of it glued to his phone or pacing the hotel suite while on conference calls. On the last day, as they strolled on the beach, Layla reached for his hand. He took it, but his grip was limp. Then his phone rang again. Without hesitation, he answered, releasing her hand. She caught a glimpse of the caller ID. It was Vanessa. The drive back was silent. Every mile felt like another nail in the coffin of her happiness. One afternoon, unable to contain her anxiety, Layla confided in Rachel Bennett again. Rachel listened, her eyes mirroring the growing alarm. "What do you want to do, Layla?" "Maybe you should talk to him directly. Demand some answers." But Layla feared confrontation. Daniel hated drama. She worried that if she pushed too hard, she'd drive him further away. Still, she couldn't live with the uncertainty. A tipping point came 3 days later. Layla was organizing Daniel's closet, something she did occasionally because Daniel, for all his business acumen, was notoriously messy about his personal spaces. As she moved a stack of shirts, a crumpled hotel receipt fell to the floor. It was from the L'Avenue Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. The date was just 2 nights prior, when Daniel had told her he was going to a late business meeting at the office. Her heart pounded as she read the details. A dinner charge for 2, a bottle of expensive champagne, desserts for 2, a suite booked for the night under Redwood Enterprises. That was the final blow. There was no more rationalizing. She stared at the receipt, her vision blurring with tears. She could have waited for Daniel to come home. She could have demanded answers, yelling and screaming, hurling accusations. But instead, she felt an overwhelming sense of despair. She left the receipt on his desk in plain sight, walked into the nursery, and sobbed quietly. Hugging her growing belly, she whispered, "I'm sorry," over and over, as if apologizing to her unborn child for the chaos they were inheriting. That evening, Layla mustered the courage to confront Daniel. She waited in the living room, lights dimmed, her hands fidgeting with the corners of a cushion. Daniel arrived close to midnight, looking exhausted. She silently handed him the receipt. The color drained from his face. For a few moments, neither spoke. Then he began to stammer. "Layla, this isn't what you think. It's exactly what I think," she cut him off. Her voice trembled, but there was a steely undercurrent. "You were with Vanessa, weren't you?" He didn't deny it. Instead, he tried to justify it. "We were discussing the merger. We needed privacy in a hotel suite, all night." Her voice cracked. "Daniel, I'm your wife. I'm carrying your child. How could you do this?" Tears streamed down her face, and Daniel tried to approach her, arms extended. She recoiled as though his touch burned. "Layla, listen," he insisted, frustration tinging his voice. "Yes, I was with Vanessa. But it was work, she scoffed, choking back a sob. "You expect me to believe that?" His eyes flickered with guilt. Things got out of hand. I was lonely, stressed, and she was there. The admission confirmed her worst nightmare. She turned away, hugging herself. The baby kicked inside her, as though responding to her agony. She whispered, "I want you out, Daniel." His mouth fell open. "Layla, it was a mistake. I swear it didn't mean anything." Fury surged within her. "A mistake? The only mistake I made was believing you, loving you, trusting you with my future and my child's future." She gestured to the house around them. "All this money, all this success, what does it matter if you can't be faithful?" Tears were flooding her cheeks, but her voice rose. Daniel tried to hold her, but she pushed him away. "Go, just go." He stared at her, tears brimming in his own eyes, but she wouldn't relent. She watched him leave, the door slamming behind him. In that moment, she felt an odd mixture of devastation and grim relief. The truth was out. There was no more hiding. For 2 agonizing days, Layla heard nothing from Daniel. She didn't answer his calls, texts, or the repeated knocks at the mansion's front door. Wordlessly, she handed the butler instructions not to let him in. She was drowning in heartbreak, reeling from his betrayal, yet at the same time, a strange clarity came over her. On the 3rd day, she decided she needed to leave. The mansion felt suffocating, filled with memories of their fleeting happiness. She called her cousin Morgan Smith, who lived near Napa Valley, explaining what happened in halting breaths. Morgan immediately invited her to stay at his countryside house, where he lived with his wife, Zoe Brown. Layla packed a small suitcase, carefully folded some maternity clothes, and took a final glance at the nursery. It looked so peaceful, the crib draped in a pastel canopy, the walls painted with a whimsical mural of hot air balloons. It was a painful reminder of the dream she had nurtured and lost. She left a note for Daniel, brief and direct. "I can't stay here anymore. Don't look for me, Layla." Then she slipped out the door, climbed into her car, and drove into the night. When Daniel returned later that evening, he found the house dark. Calling out for Layla, he was greeted with silence. Frantically, he searched every room until he stumbled into the nursery. The emptiness hit him like a tidal wave. He saw her note on the crib, felt his knees go weak, and sank to the floor. There, in the soft glow of a nightlight shaped like a moon, Daniel Redwood realized he might have lost everything that mattered. He dialed Layla's phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. In desperation, he texted Rachel Bennett, then called his father Stephen Redwood and mother Dorothy Redwood. No one had heard from Layla. His next call was to her best friend, Rachel, but she refused to reveal Layla's whereabouts, only saying, "You should have thought about the consequences before you betrayed her." Daniel spent a sleepless night pacing the mansion. Everything seemed hollow. The grand foyer, the glittering chandeliers, the expensive artwork, it all mocked him. He recalled how Layla had once filled these halls with laughter and warmth. Now he had replaced that with a cold emptiness. Layla's drive up to Napa was long and tearful. She arrived at Morgan Smith's house just as dawn was breaking, the horizon painted pink and orange. Morgan and Zoe welcomed her with open arms, ushering her into their guest room, helping her settle in, and preparing a hot meal. Although they tried to console her, Layla barely managed more than a few words. She was exhausted physically and emotionally. Over the next few days, with Morgan and Zoe's gentle encouragement, she started to talk haltingly at first about the betrayal. She shared her fears about raising a child in a broken marriage. She worried about her financial dependence on Daniel and Redwood Enterprises, but Morgan assured her, "You're strong, Layla. You can get through this. We'll help you in any way we can." Zoe, a nurse at a local clinic, took Layla to see an obstetrician who confirmed that despite the stress, the baby was healthy. Layla felt a surge of relief. She might be heartbroken, but she was still going to be a mother, and that thought sparked a flicker of hope. She began making plans to find her own place, maybe start her design business anew in Northern California. Back in Los Angeles, Daniel found that life without Layla was disorienting. He tried to bury himself in work, but he realized Redwood Enterprises held no solace. Vanessa Clark, sensing an emotional shift, approached him with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked one night when the rest of the office had gone home. Daniel gave her a glare. "This is all your fault," he hissed, eyes brimming with anger and despair. Vanessa flinched. "My fault? You were a willing participant," she shot back, though her tone was oddly sympathetic. "But maybe I took advantage of the situation. I'm sorry. Sorry won't bring her back," Daniel muttered. In a moment of clarity, he realized how empty his affair with Vanessa had been. It was never about love. It was about an escape from stress, a seductive thrill. He felt disgusted with himself. Over the next week, Daniel struggled to salvage his personal life. He tried to contact Rachel, Morgan, or anyone who might give him a clue about where Layla was. He pleaded for forgiveness via text messages, voicemails, and emails that went unanswered. He avoided Vanessa Clark, restricting their relationship to purely professional matters. Even Redwood Enterprises saw a downturn in productivity as Daniel's mind was elsewhere. His parents, Stephen and Dorothy Redwood, flew in from San Diego to comfort him, but they had little solace to offer. Stephen merely said, "You messed up, son. Now you have to live with the consequences." Dorothy's eyes glistened with tears of disappointment, but she wrapped her arms around her son regardless. "Fix this, Daniel. Don't let your baby grow up without a father." 2 months passed. Layla continued to live at Morgan's countryside home. The baby bump was now quite noticeable, and with every kick, she was reminded of the complicated future she faced. She had not spoken to Daniel since the night she drove away. She received near daily text messages from him, some lengthy apologies, others just a simple, "I love you, please come home." She never replied. Eventually, though, Rachel visited Layla in Napa, urging her to at least meet with Daniel. "He's in pieces," Rachel told her. "I'm not saying you have to forgive him. Just let him see you, talk things through." Layla hesitated. Her heart still ached. The betrayal felt like a knife wound that refused to heal. Yet she also knew she carried Daniel's child. At some point, they had to figure out a co-parenting plan, even if they could never salvage their marriage. She finally agreed to a meeting in a neutral location, a small cafe in Napa Valley. She chose a table near the back, far from prying eyes. Daniel flew in early that morning. When he walked into the cafe, Layla's heart clenched. He looked thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. As soon as he saw her, his gaze drifted to her baby bump, and tears formed in his eyes. "Layla," he breathed, taking a seat across from her. She said nothing. He reached out to touch her hand, but she pulled back. The barrier was clear. Daniel cleared his throat. How are you? How's the baby?" "We're fine," she replied tersely. Then she took a deep breath. "I want to make this clear. I didn't agree to meet you so you could make excuses. We need to talk about the future of this child." Daniel nodded. "Of course." "I'm so sorry, Layla." I know words can't fix what I've done, but I want to do right by you and our baby." Layla's eyes flickered with pain. "I wish that was enough." They talked quietly for over an hour. Daniel promised to provide financial support, but Layla told him she wanted to find her own path. She didn't want to live off Redwood Enterprises' money if it meant a constant reminder of what he'd done. She assured him, however, that if he truly wanted to be involved in the child's life on the child's terms, she wouldn't deny him that right. He pleaded, "Come back. We can try counseling, anything." "I'll do anything for you." Her voice was emotionless. "You didn't do anything when you had the chance. You did the one thing that would destroy us." Daniel's shoulders slumped, tears finally breaking free. "I'm begging you, let me make amends." Layla felt a flash of pity, remembering the man she once loved, the father of her child. But the hurt was too deep. "I can't, Daniel. Not now. Maybe not ever." They parted ways in front of the cafe. Daniel offered to walk her to her car, but she declined. She drove away, feeling a surge of conflicting emotions. Part of her was relieved to have seen him, at least now she knew how remorseful he was. But another part of her feared that letting him back into her heart would only open the wound again. Despite the pain, Layla poured her energy into building a new life. She started a small, freelance design business, offering services to local wineries and bed and breakfasts in the Napa region. Word of her talent spread quickly. Her color choices and elegant touches transformed ordinary spaces into inviting sanctuaries. She began earning enough to consider renting a modest cottage closer to town, one with a small garden where she could imagine her child playing in the future. She also kept up with her prenatal visits, and as her due date inched closer, Morgan and Zoe helped prepare a nursery in the cottage. While not as lavish as the one in Bel Air, it held genuine warmth, soft pastel colors, whimsical art from local artists, and second-hand furniture lovingly refurbished with Layla's own hands made the space feel comforting. During this time, Daniel tried sending gifts, large sums of money, and even a car to ease her travels. Layla returned all of them. She refused to accept blood money, as she once called it to Rachel. The only thing she allowed was for Daniel to attend key doctor's appointments if he chose to. On 2 occasions, Daniel showed up, always looking haggard and emotional. He asked to accompany her, and though it was painfully awkward, Layla agreed. She recognized that the baby deserved a father, even if she could not repair what was broken between them. Meanwhile, Redwood Enterprises faced turmoil. The merger that Vanessa Clark had orchestrated was under scrutiny by federal regulators. Stress mounted, and so did rumors that the Redwood brand was tarnished by Daniel's personal scandal. Unbeknownst to Daniel, Vanessa was quietly positioning herself to leave Redwood Enterprises, negotiating a more lucrative job offer with a competitor. Daniel discovered the betrayal one morning when a colleague, John Chambers, informed him that Vanessa's resignation was already drafted. At first, Daniel felt anger. Then he realized the irony. She was leaving him high and dry, just as he'd turned his back on Layla. He confronted Vanessa in her office, but she shrugged. "It was just business," she said, packing her desk. "And, if we're being honest, it was just an affair. Neither was built to last." Daniel stood there, silent. He realized that the affair with Vanessa had always been hollow. In that moment, all illusions he might have had about their connection collapsed. She left Redwood Enterprises without a backward glance, but her departure left Daniel to manage the fallout alone. With the merger on shaky ground, Redwood Enterprises' stock took a hit. Investors grew restless. Some of Daniel's biggest clients threatened to walk away. He spent sleepless nights trying to save his company, once his pride and joy. Yet every time he paused, he thought of Layla. He remembered the nights they stayed up late, planning a future full of love and children. He recalled the gentle way she'd run her fingers through his hair, the morning coffee she'd bring him in bed, and the genuine laughter that once filled their house. He understood now that no amount of corporate success could compensate for a shattered heart, for the loss of a life partner who had given him unconditional love. The mansion felt like a hollow relic of a life he no longer inhabited. The staff walked on eggshells around him, and his parents, Stephen and Dorothy, quietly pleaded for him to fix his personal life. But Daniel knew it might be too late. In a last-ditch effort, he sold off a significant portion of Redwood Enterprises' assets to stabilize the company. With that crisis momentarily averted, Daniel turned his full attention to Layla. He hired a small local law firm, Morgan & Morgan, to help him draft a formal separation agreement, offering child support and a generous settlement. But he also sent a handwritten letter. "Dear Layla, I'm sending the legal paperwork because I don't want you to worry about finances for you or our child. But this is not a statement of giving up. It's a statement of responsibility. I know you don't need my money, but I want you to know I'll always provide for our baby. I also want you to know that losing you has made me realize what truly matters in life. I'm sorry it took so much heartbreak for me to see it. I can't ask you to forgive me, but please know I will never stop trying to make amends." With all the regret in my heart, Daniel Layla received the letter and cried, unsure if it was wise to be moved by it. She could feel his remorse, but the trust between them had been shattered. As her due date approached, Layla found herself waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat from vivid dreams. In one dream, she saw Daniel cradling their baby in the nursery, the two of them beaming with joy. She would wake, tears streaming down her face, wishing the dream were real. In her quiet moments, she reread Daniel's letter. She told herself not to be swayed, that she had to stay strong. But an undercurrent of longing persisted. She knew that deep down she wanted her child to have a father who was present, who cared, not just a financial provider. And no matter how deeply he had hurt her, Daniel was the child's father. Her belly had grown large, and the baby was due any time. Morgan and Zoe insisted she stay with them until the birth, for safety. Part of her wanted to go back to her own cottage, but the nights felt lonely. At least at Morgan's place, she had comfort and immediate help. Still, she couldn't shake the thought that Daniel deserved a chance to witness the birth of his child. One crisp autumn morning, Layla woke with sharp pains in her abdomen. Zoe recognized the signs of labor immediately. They rushed to the hospital, Morgan driving, Zoe in the back seat with Layla, timing contractions and trying to keep her calm. Through labored breathing, Layla said, "Call Daniel." Zoe nodded, already dialing. Daniel answered on the first ring, his voice tense. When Zoe told him Layla was in labor, he dropped everything and sped to Napa, driving well above the speed limit to make it in time. The labor was intense and lasted nearly 12 hours. Layla clenched Morgan's and Zoe's hands, tears flowing. She thought of the times Daniel had tenderly placed his hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick. She wondered if he would make it. Just as the final contractions tore through her, Daniel burst into the hospital room, frantic. He rushed to her side. "Layla, I'm here. I'm here," he gasped, tears streaming down his face. Exhausted, in excruciating pain, she had no energy left to protest his presence. Part of her was even relieved. She just nodded weakly, and he gently took her hand. "You can do this," he whispered, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Moments later, a cry filled the room. Their baby, a girl, entered the world. The sound overwhelmed Layla, a torrent of emotion crashing into her. She sobbed uncontrollably as the nurses placed the tiny newborn in her arms. Daniel stood by, awe-struck, tears in his eyes. Layla gazed at her daughter's pink, scrunched face. The world shifted. Nothing mattered except this precious life. She glanced at Daniel. For a split second, their eyes locked in something that felt almost like forgiveness, or at least a shared miracle. Daniel murmured, "She's beautiful." Layla's voice trembled as she replied, "She is. Meet your daughter, Daniel." The next few days at the hospital were a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and tearful moments of pure wonder. Daniel stayed in a nearby hotel, but he visited the hospital every morning and stayed until visiting hours ended. He changed diapers, carefully cradled his newborn daughter, and watched over Layla as she slept. Worn out from labor, Layla found it difficult to remain indifferent. She saw the raw love in Daniel's eyes whenever he looked at their baby, whom they decided to name Aurora. He was gentle, attentive, and visibly remorseful. Each day, he quietly asked if she needed anything, from special dietary food to postpartum care items. She refused at first, determined not to let her guard down, but beneath her exhaustion, a small part of her acknowledged his effort. When it was time for Layla to be discharged, Daniel offered to drive her and Aurora to Morgan's house. She hesitated. She had not yet decided how much involvement Daniel would have beyond daily visits. Seeing her dilemma, Morgan gently nudged, "Let him help, Layla. You can decide the rest later." Reluctantly, she agreed. Daniel handled the baby car seat with great care, ensuring Aurora was safely strapped in. As he drove, Layla sat in the back seat with Aurora. She watched Daniel's face in the rearview mirror. It was filled with pride and fear, like any new father. For the next few weeks, Daniel remained in Napa, renting a small apartment near Morgan and Zoe's place. Each morning he'd arrive with groceries, or flowers, or anything he thought might help make Layla's recovery smoother. He cooked soups and stews, took out the trash, ran errands. He never insisted on staying too long. If Layla asked him to leave, he complied. But slowly, she began to see how committed he was, not just to Aurora, but also to supporting her. One evening, after putting Aurora to sleep, Layla found Daniel in the living room, tidying up. A pang of warmth washed over her. She remembered the early days of their marriage, how he would help her rearrange pillows after her design experiments. She approached him and quietly said, "Thank you." He looked up, surprise lighting his weary features. "For what? For being here. For Aurora," she said, voice barely above a whisper. His eyes brimmed with emotion. "I'll never forgive myself for hurting you, but I promise to be here for her, always." She nodded, tears threatening to spill again. "I know." As weeks turned into months, Daniel continued to be a constant presence, and Aurora thrived. Her giggles brightened even the dreariest days. Layla started to feel a strange sense of partnership with Daniel again, though she carefully guarded her heart. She still didn't know if she could trust him or love him the way she once did. But seeing him hold their daughter with such devotion reminded her of the man she had fallen for in the first place. One day, Daniel approached Layla with a proposition. "I found a beautiful cottage on the outskirts of town, near the vineyards. It has a garden, plenty of sunlight, and enough room for Aurora. If you're willing, I'd like to buy it for you. Or we could buy it together, as partners. But only if you want." She hesitated. "I don't want to feel indebted to you." "You wouldn't be," he answered gently. "I just want you and Aurora to have a home that's comfortable. And if you allow me to be part of that home, I'd be honored." The sincerity in his voice wavered her resolve. She told him she would think about it. Just as their fragile peace was solidifying, Redwood Enterprises beckoned Daniel back to Los Angeles. The board demanded his presence for urgent business matters. The public scandal had cooled, but the company still needed stable leadership. Daniel faced a dilemma. If he returned, he risked losing the progress he had made with Layla and Aurora. If he stayed, Redwood Enterprises might crumble further. He broached the topic delicately. I have to go back to LA for a while, but I don't want to leave you or Aurora, he confessed to Layla one evening. Will you come with me? Even temporarily. Layla felt her chest tighten. The thought of returning to the place where her heart was broken terrified her. But she also recognized that Daniel was trying to fix his mistakes while balancing his responsibilities. After a long pause, she spoke. I'm not ready to move back into the mansion. Too many memories. Daniel nodded in understanding. We don't have to live in the mansion. I can find somewhere else for the three of us, or I can just go back alone. But I'm asking, please consider letting me be part of your daily life, part of Aurora's. Conflicting emotions warred within her. She called Rachel Bennett and Morgan Smith for advice. Rachel, though still furious at Daniel for his affair, admitted that people could change. Only you can decide if his remorse is genuine enough, she cautioned. Morgan added, Daniel has been a different man since coming here. I've seen it, but that doesn't erase the pain he caused you. In the end, Layla chose a middle ground. She agreed to go to Los Angeles for a short period to see how things felt and to allow Daniel to handle Redwood Enterprises' business. They would not stay at the mansion. Daniel arranged a comfortable apartment near the Redwood Enterprises HQ, a place that had none of the old ghosts. They packed up their essentials, carefully stowed Aurora's things, and made the trip south. Life in Los Angeles proved challenging. Daniel was once again pulled into a whirlwind of board meetings, press conferences, and investor negotiations. Yet he made it a point to come home for dinner each evening. He insisted on doing late-night feedings for Aurora so Layla could rest. He even scheduled therapy sessions for himself to confront the guilt and choices that led him astray. Layla found a local design project that kept her busy a few days a week. She also took Aurora to Mommy and Me classes, forging new friendships with other mothers. Gradually, she saw that Daniel maintained a firm boundary with his work life. There were no more suspicious late-night texts, no more urgent hotel meetings. Vanessa Clark was gone, and Redwood Enterprises was refocusing on its core mission. One night, after Aurora had fallen asleep, Daniel asked Layla if she would consider attending couples counseling with him. I know we're not together, he said haltingly, but I'd like us to have a chance at healing if that's possible. Still wary, Layla agreed. Their first session was raw and painful, full of tears and confessions. Daniel recounted how stress made him weak and how he sought validation in all the wrong places. Layla admitted that while she hated him for what he did, part of her still felt something strong enough to make her want to try. Each session delved deeper into the roots of their issues, communication breakdowns, emotional neglect, and the allure of temptation in a high-pressure environment. Months passed. Aurora turned 6 months old, babbling and crawling around the apartment. The therapy sessions continued, and though progress was slow, Layla sensed genuine effort from Daniel. One afternoon, he asked if she would accompany him to the Redwood Mansion. It's still ours, technically. I thought we could see if it's worth keeping, or if we should sell it. Steeling herself, Layla agreed. She hadn't set foot there since she left that heartbreaking note. Driving through the gates, her heart pounded. The same fountain, the same marble steps, and the same grand front door welcomed her, but everything felt different now. Inside, the halls were quiet. Most of the staff had been let go or reassigned. Dust had gathered on the furniture. In the nursery, the pastel walls were as she'd left them, but the crib stood empty. Layla's chest tightened with a flood of memories. Daniel stood behind her, carrying Aurora. Their baby blinked at the painted hot air balloons. Layla stepped closer to the crib, gently running her fingers over the soft linen. Tears welled up, and Daniel placed his free hand on her shoulder. She didn't shrug him off. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything. She took a shaky breath. I know. Then she turned to face him, eyes glistening. I don't know if I can live here again. Too many memories. Daniel nodded. We don't have to. If you want, we can sell it. Start fresh somewhere else. Layla looked around the room. Once, she had imagined her baby would sleep there. Now Aurora was older, already babbling. The moment had passed. Maybe that's best, she said quietly. Shortly after that day, Daniel put Redwood Mansion on the market. It sold quickly to a foreign investor who admired its Hollywood pedigree. The final paperwork was signed, and Daniel felt a sense of closure, mixed with sadness and relief. He used part of the proceeds to shore up Redwood Enterprises, ensuring its stability, and set aside a separate fund for Aurora's future. Meanwhile, Daniel and Layla continued their counseling. With each session, they learned new ways to communicate and express their needs. There were setbacks, fights triggered by old wounds, but they also had breakthroughs. Daniel admitted his deep-seated fear of failure, how it drove him to mania in his work. Layla confessed her loneliness and her desire for emotional support, not just financial security. On Aurora's first birthday, they threw a small party in the apartment courtyard. Rachel, Morgan, Zoe, and a handful of friends attended. There was a simple cake with pink frosting, and Aurora giggled as she smeared it on her cheeks. Daniel and Layla stood side by side, capturing the moment on their phones. The look they exchanged held cautious hope. Almost a full year had passed since Aurora's birth, and life in the small apartment had begun to resemble something steady, if not entirely healed. Late one evening, after Layla had managed to rock Aurora to sleep, she padded into the living room to find Daniel seated on the couch, his eyes distant. He seemed lost in thought, thumbing through the pages of a well-worn family photo album. Layla paused in the doorway. She remembered the early days of their relationship, how spontaneous and exhilarating it had been. Now, everything felt quieter, as though each step they took required careful calculation. They had spent months in counseling, unearthing the pain that still lingered and attempting to stitch together a bond that had been brutally torn. Yet, she couldn't deny how much Daniel had changed. He was more patient, more thoughtful. There were no more secret phone calls or hidden receipts. Instead, he was present, truly present, in every moment with their daughter. As if sensing her presence, Daniel closed the photo album and stood. His expression was tender, yet fear hovered in his gaze. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. She inclined her head, and he gestured for her to sit beside him. They settled onto the couch, legs nearly touching. She noticed his hands tremble as he reached for hers. "I've been thinking," Daniel said, his voice low and unsteady, "about everything, about how far we've come, how much we've lost, and what we've rebuilt." He swallowed, as though bracing himself for her reaction. "I know I've hurt you more than words can ever repair. But these past months, living here with Aurora, watching you grow strong again, going to counseling, it's shown me what love really is." Layla's throat tightened. She recalled all the time she'd cried alone in this same apartment, wishing she could trust him again, but not daring to. Even so, she couldn't deny that bit by bit, she had seen him evolve, shedding the arrogance and desperation that once led to his greatest mistake. Daniel slid off the couch and knelt in front of her. The sight took her breath away. There was no grand gesture, no extravagant ring or lavish setting, just her husband, humble and earnest. "I'm not asking you to forget what I did," he began, his voice trembling. "That betrayal will always be a part of our story, but I am asking if you'll continue to build this new life with me. Will you renew our vows, Layla?" Her eyes immediately brimmed with tears. She had wondered, in her private moments, whether something like this might happen, a chance to stand together and promise anew. Yet she had told herself not to hope for it. She couldn't bear the thought of being hurt again. She hesitated, words stuck in her throat. She thought of the times he had proven himself over the past year, cooking meals, handling midnight feedings, humbling himself in therapy, selling the mansion that had once been their pride. A quiet voice inside her whispered that he was, indeed, a different man. Layla finally spoke, her voice soft and trembling. "You broke my heart," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You nearly broke me, but you've also shown me how far you're willing to go to make it right. I'll never erase what happened, and I need you to understand how fragile my trust still is." Daniel squeezed her hands gently. "I do, and I promise I won't take that trust for granted ever again." She looked into his eyes, which shimmered with raw sincerity. Despite the pain, despite the scars, there was a cautious hope coursing through her. She inhaled unsteadily, remembering the very first time she'd said yes to him, how that had filled her with warmth and light. This time, she was older, wiser, and still bruised, yet part of her wanted to believe in second chances. "All right," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I'll renew our vows with you. But I need you to understand this is a process, a step, not a final destination." Daniel choked back tears as relief flooded his features. He pulled a small box from his pocket and handed it to her. Inside was a delicate rose gold band engraved with a single word on the interior, Aurora. Layla let out a quiet gasp, a swirl of emotion tightening in her chest. "This isn't about forgetting," he said, his eyes locked on hers. "It's about moving forward together. Every time you look at this ring, I hope you'll remember that our daughter gave us a reason to find hope again." Layla slid the band onto her finger, feeling its gentle weight. She could still sense the sting of the past, but a cautious warmth accompanied it now. She leaned forward, wrapping her arms around Daniel's neck. He returned the embrace, and they clung to each other as though afraid to let go. They stayed that way for a while, the only sounds in the apartment, the soft hum of the air conditioner and the muffled coos of Aurora in the next room. When they finally pulled apart, Layla found her voice again. "I want us to do this the right way," she said. "Not a huge spectacle, but something meaningful. Maybe with just the people who've been there for us from the very beginning." Daniel nodded. "Whatever you want, I'll make it happen." He stayed kneeling, gazing up at her with a mixture of awe and vulnerability. In that moment, Layla recognized the strength it took for him to admit his mistakes and actively work to correct them. And she acknowledged her own courage in offering forgiveness not for his sake alone, but for her own peace of mind and for the future they were trying to create together. Layla kissed him gently, tears still sliding down her cheeks. It wasn't a fairy tale kiss that erased every trace of sorrow. It was a quiet, emotional promise. They knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, that trust once shattered could not be mended overnight. But they had both chosen to take a chance on each other again, and, for the first time, in what felt like forever, that choice made Layla's heart lift with possibility. Later that evening, after she and Daniel had spoken about potential dates and locations for a small ceremony, Layla checked on Aurora. The baby was sound asleep, curled into a little ball, her chest rising and falling with each gentle breath. Layla stood there, ring catching a soft glow from the hallway light, filled with gratitude and a touch of apprehension. She might never forget Daniel's betrayal, but she also saw that healing was possible, and even more than that, building something new could be both terrifying and beautiful. So, as the clock neared midnight in that modest apartment, they took their first steps toward a new promise, one forged in honesty, caution, and, above all, an unspoken love that refused to be extinguished. 6 months later, on a bright spring day in a small garden behind their new home, Daniel and Layla stood surrounded by a handful of close friends and family. Morgan, Zoe, Rachel, Stephen, Dorothy. Aurora, dressed in a tiny white frock, waddled around, occasionally clapping and giggling. The officiant guided them through a vow renewal ceremony that felt both solemn and hopeful. They spoke honest words about love, forgiveness, and redemption, There were no extravagant receptions, no headlines, just two people who had once nearly destroyed each other but were now choosing to rebuild. When Daniel kissed Layla, it was with a reverence born of regret and gratitude. Leela kissed him back, heart pounding, not out of naive idealism, but out of a deliberate, brave decision to forgive and move forward. Their journey would always carry the memory of betrayal, but it would also carry the strength of learning, of surviving pain, and of cherishing the love that blossomed anew. They walked back up the aisle hand in hand, Aurora toddling beside them. The future lay ahead, uncertain yet full of promise, a testament that sometimes, even from the deepest wounds, a stronger bond can emerge. Thank you for watching this emotional journey of love, betrayal, and the power of second chances. Daniel and Layla's story shows us that even in our darkest hours, the bonds of family and genuine remorse can lead to renewal. Though heartbreak can leave scars, true commitment and consistent effort can pave the way for forgiveness and hope. Their path was never simple, but as we've seen, love finds a way forward when both hearts are ready to heal. If you found yourself invested in their story, please hit the like button and share this video to let others experience the twists and turns of Daniel and Layla's path to redemption. And don't forget to subscribe. Your support allows us to bring you more real-life drama stories just like this. Thank you again for joining us. We hope to see you in the next installment.